The cold stillness of early spring clung to the frozen surface of Lake Peipus as dawn broke on April 5th, 1242. The winter's chill was still strong in the northern territories between modern-day Estonia and Russia. Under a grey sky, the silence of the lake was broken by the arrival of heavy knights from the west, the Teutonic Order, proud warriors of the Latin West, bearing white cloaks adorned with black crosses, carrying the Catholic cross into battle. The Catholic powers to the west, primarily the Teutonic Order, bolstered by German crusaders and papal support, had expanded rapidly through the Baltic, converting or subjugating pagan peoples like the Prussians and Livonians. Emboldened by success and sanctioned by the Pope, they turned their attention to Orthodox Rus. The Teutonic Order, led by the crusader Hermann of Dorpat and Andreas von Felben, mustered a host of German knights, Danish allies, and Estonian auxiliaries. They advanced eastward across the frozen lakes and forests, intending to bring the Republic of Novgorod to heel. The Teutonics fielded a force of roughly 1,000 Estonian infantry, 350 Teutonic knights, 150 Livonian knights, and 250 German and Danish heavy cavalry, bringing their entire force to around 1,800 or so. They had crossed the Narva River and were pursuing a considerably larger force of the Republic of Novgorod. Although fewer in number, the crusading force was ever confident in their heavy mounted knights, who were veterans of many battles and campaigns, and were known across the medieval world for their devastating charges in battle. By the early 13th century, the lands of Rus were fractured and disorganized. The Mongol invasions had devastated Kiev and other principalities to the south and east. However, Novgorod and Pskov in the northwest had avoided total destruction, thanks in part to their geographical isolation and clever diplomacy. When the Germanic Catholic military order, the Teutonic Knights, began encroaching eastward into Orthodox lands, the Novgorod Republic had recalled Alexander Nevsky from exile to defend his people. Prince Alexander, a young and capable commander of Novgorod barely in his 20s, had already proved himself in battle and diplomacy. In July 1240, Alexander had already made a name for himself by defeating a Swedish incursion at the Battle of the Neva, earning him the name Nevsky. But internal Novgorodian politics, always volatile, forced him into exile. Now commanding the main army, Alexander wasted no time. He began to form his defenses. His scouts reported that the enemy had crossed the Narva River and were advancing toward his position. But instead of engaging them on open ground, Alexander Nevsky chose the battlefield carefully. He decided to meet them at Lake Peipus, where the frozen expanse would neutralize the Teutonic heavy cavalry's ability to flank or maneuver effectively. He knew the strengths and weaknesses of the Western Knights. They were formidable in direct charge, but vulnerable if their formation was broken. Nevsky's army, numbering perhaps around 5,000 to 6,000 men, included lightly armored infantry, horse archers, and a corps of Druzhina, his elite cavalry. Although the Teutonic forces were fewer, maybe around 1,500 to 2,000, they still fielded veteran heavily armored knights trained in shock combat, arguably the best cavalry in the medieval world at the time. Battle was on the horizon. The two forces met on the frozen fields of Lake Peipus. The Crusaders overly confident in their heavy knights, and the Novgorodians ever hopeful with their numerical superiority and competent commander, Alexander Nevsky. The Crusader forces without hesitation charged in formation, ironclad and confident. They were heading straight toward the Novgorodian position. Picking up speed, the heavy knights at the forefront formed into wedge formations, designed to break enemy lines, drove into the Novgorodian ranks, causing sheer chaos. The auxiliary Estonian infantry remained at the rear whilst the heavy Crusader knights dealt destruction. For the moment, the Crusader charge succeeded. The knights smashed through the first Novgorodian lines. But then Alexander Nevsky gave the order, and his right flank galloped forward. Horse archers began raining arrows down on the Danish Crusader left flank and Estonian infantry. With the Crusader cavalry tied down at the center, Alexander Nevsky sprung his trap. He led his elite Druzhina heavy cavalry inward toward the flanks and rear of the Crusader cavalry. The Druzhina cavalry smashed into the rear and flanks of the Crusaders, causing panic and disarray. Surrounded and increasingly disorganized, the knights found themselves in a dire situation. Panic set in, starting with the auxiliary Estonian infantry at the rear. They fled first, followed shortly by the Danish contingents on the left flank. Any of the Teutonic knights at the center who were able to fight through the crowds fled for their lives, but were pursued relentlessly by Alexander's men. According to accounts, some of the ice began to crack beneath the weight of man and horse, though modern historians debate whether anyone actually drowned. In contrast, according to the Russian chroniclers, the ice began to crack. Some horses and men broke through, dragged under by their own armor. Though modern historians debate whether the ice truly broke or this was symbolic embellishment, it is clear that panic set in and there was a mass retreat. Although victorious, the battle on the ice did not end the threat from the Teutonic Order, but it effectively halted their eastward expansion. The Catholic crusading frontier was pushed back, and Novgorod's independence and Orthodox faith were preserved. Alexander Nevsky emerged as a national hero. He was later canonized by the Russian Orthodox Church and became a symbol of resistance against foreign aggression, whether Latin or Mongol. In the Soviet era, his legend was repurposed in the famous 1938 film Alexander Nevsky by Sergei Eisenstein, where the message was clear: Russians stand firm against Western invaders. But beyond the myth and memory, the battle on the ice remains a remarkable example of strategic acumen. Alexander Nevsky fought not only with swords but with careful diplomacy, choosing to resist the West while placating the Mongols, ensuring Novgorod's survival in a perilous time.